So Carlos won't be here today. His little girl's sick. So maybe he'll get to watch online later. Happy Easter to everybody. If you don't know what Easter is, then on this day, a little over 2,000 years ago, the promised Savior that we'll eventually get to in our chronological timeline, after he died as a sacrifice for the sins of the world, he went to the tomb, and then he overcame death and rose again so that he could conquer death on our behalf, and we, when he returns, can rise again to meet him and overcome death as well. So we're very grateful for that, and that's why we celebrate this day. I call it Resurrection Sunday. And by the way, it's a good learning lesson for us that this is why the church meets on Sunday. So if you're thinking about when we get to the Old Testament law, which we'll get to very soon, that was given to Moses, and we're going to be introduced to Moses today. Then there'll be a command in the Mosaic law to remember the Sabbath day. And well, the Sabbath day is not Sunday, so that was yesterday, was the Sabbath day. So the church meets on Sunday because it's the day Jesus rose from the dead. All right, so you may not have known that, and it's a good time to explain that. All right, so we left off last week with the 70 people, which would be, of course, Jacob, his sons, their wives, their kids, that flee from Canaan and during the drought or the famine, and then they go to Egypt, and Joseph's going to take very good care of them, okay? And so while they were there, we saw last week in Exodus chapter 1, if you wouldn't turn there, Exodus chapter 1, we saw last week when we began to read chapter 1 that they multiplied exceedingly there in the land of Egypt. So that 70 grew over the years into many, many people. And so the Pharaoh, or the king of Egypt, that was over Joseph, he loved the people of Israel. He loved Joseph. He took good care of them, but eventually he died. And so in process of time, the Pharaoh that existed at this time in our history that we're reading, he didn't regard any of the past, any of the history. That meant nothing to him. All he saw was a bunch of Israelites. And he's like, man, they're beginning to outnumber us. And we got to watch it, And so he put out the order to make them slaves. And they built the treasured cities of Egypt, all right? And not only did he put out the order to make them slaves and enslave them, but he wanted to cut down on their population and make them weak. And so he issued the order to kill every baby boy that was born. So through a process of attrition, they would eventually be dwindling down. And of course, there was much resistance to that, but that was the order carried out. And that brings us up to a very special little boy, which we'll get to here in just a moment. But if you'll look here now, in the latter part of Exodus chapter 1, look at the last verse, verse 22. Exodus chapter 1, verse 22. And Pharaoh, and Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter ye shall save alive. All right? So the little baby boys were to be thrown into the river and drowned, and then you keep the little girls. Now, let's go ahead now and go to chapter 2. And there went a man of the house of Levi, and took to wife or that means married, a daughter of Levi. So if you'll look up here, you'll see that Levi was one of the sons of Israel. And Levi, as he had children, and as the other sons of Israel had children, they became tribes, okay? So this is a tribal community. And so we have two people here that are getting married. One of them belonged to the house or the tribe of Levi, and he took a wife who also was a daughter or a descendant of that man Levi, that son Levi. So these are Levites, okay? And so what we're going to do is look today at a particular son that was born to these two Levites. Now, while you're there in the book of Exodus, if you'll keep your finger there in Exodus chapter 2, and just move your pages forward to the very next book in the Old Testament. The very next book. What is it? Leviticus. Make sure you get there so you can see it. Leviticus. Y'all see the root word Leviticus? What is it? It's Levi. There we go. And so that gives us an idea already of what the book of Leviticus is going to be about. It's going to be about the descendants of Levi and law that was passed down to them and the office, the godly office that would be given to the sons of Levi. Okay? So now we have this framing up here in the Bible. Genesis is the beginning, right? How things began. Exodus is how we're going to get God's people from bondage out of Egypt back to the promised land, their exit. Leviticus is going to be about a law for the people of Levi in the office that they had. And you'll see how it all flows together. It's going to be very beautiful as we go through. All right? But now back here in Exodus, you turn back with your finger and we're going to look here now. So they got married. Now if you look in verse 2, and the woman conceived and bare a son. And when she saw him that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. Now I went and had a get together with my kids yesterday and my grandkids and Tyler. And I tell you what, one of my girls, Lauren, y'all don't know her, but well, some of y'all know her, but some of y'all don't. She has got the most beautiful little baby boy. I tell you what, that boy's so handsome. And she loves that boy so much. And I was holding that little baby boy yesterday, my little grandson. And if somebody told me they were going to chunk that little boy in the river, I tell you what, the fight would be on. Is everything okay?
The fire alarm went off.
Fire alarm's going off.
Let's do the cooking, but yeah, if you go check on it, that'd be great. Thank you. So the fight would be on if someone tried to take my little grandson and throw him in the river. And don't you know that my daughter would give her life if someone tried to take that little boy from her, and her husband would do the same. He was a handsome little boy. This little boy that these Levite people had. And they're like, nobody's chunking my baby in the river. Not going to happen. And so, and they knew that God would eventually bring them out of Egypt, because God had promised Abraham that he would give him and his descendants the land of Canaan forever, remember? So because of the promises, they knew that they weren't going to be trapped here in Egypt forever. And they, so because of that, they knew that the Egyptians couldn't kill off all the Israelites. Because if they killed off all the Israelites, what would happen? They wouldn't be able to be brought out and be given the land of Canaan forever. So by faith, here's what they did. If you look here now in verse 2, and the woman conceived and bare a son, and when she saw him, that he was a goodly child or a handsome little boy, she hid him 3 months. 3 months. She's going to hide this little baby. Well, what happens to a baby? They don't stay babies. It's like puppies don't stay puppies. They get big, they get in the way. And so the baby grew. Well, after a while, you can't hide that baby any longer. You got to do something with them. They're crying, they're making noise, and you got the Egyptians on the lookout for little baby boys. So in verse 3 says, when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes and daubed it with slime and with pitch. In other words, she took a basket. And she took that basket and she waterproofed it. Okay? She takes tar. She takes earthen substances that are water resistant. And she puts them all around that basket to waterproof it. And that it says, and put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. So you got a river here. And you know, you got, like we have cattails, you know. They had this vegetation over here. And she takes that baby, she hides that baby right there at the brink of the river among those flags. Cattails, bulrushes, and I know it's not the same vegetation, but just to give you an idea of what it probably looked like. And now look here in verse 4, and his sister, that is the little baby's sister, she stood afar off, to wit, that means to know what would be done to him. She's like, we'll put the baby here and watch and see what happens. Verse 5, and the daughter of Pharaoh, isn't this something now? The very king that issues this order to destroy these little babies, she came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens, that means her servants, walked along by the riverside. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. She's like, oh, look at that. What is that over there in the flags? What is that? Go get that and bring it to me. I'm curious what that is floating over there. She could tell it's man-made. So the maidens, they go and get it. Look here in verse 6. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him and said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. So she connected the dots. She opened that little basket up, and that little baby was crying in there. Well, she is a female. I was watching a video of a little girl the other day. And I don't know whose little girl it was, but she had her little baby stroller and a baby doll in there, and she's just a little bitty girl pushing it, and that's what baby girls do. They practice being mamas. And baby boys, when they grow up, they practice tearing things up and building things and wrestling and knocking things down. It's just what God made boys to do. And so there was a natural mama instinct that kicked in with that woman when she saw that little baby. She goes, oh, I know what this is. This is one of the Hebrews' children. Well, guess what? It's just like a kid finding a puppy. Mama, can I keep it? And so this is the king's daughter. She can do what she wants to. So she decides she's going to keep that little baby. Now, Moses' sister, or the baby's sister, he's not named yet, but the baby's sister is still watching. And watch how clever this is, and watch what God did for this little baby boy. The baby's sister runs up to Pharaoh's daughter, acts like she's trying to help. And so it says in verse 7, then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and call to thee a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for thee? In other words, baby's got to be fed. I mean, they didn't have baby formula back then. You know, I mean, women actually breastfed their babies like God made them to do. And I get all out of whack when I hear people talk about the cost of baby formula and how they, and I'm like, man, God gave you the ability. You got your own baby formula. Now I know there's exceptions to that, but they're very, very rare. And so she goes, well, shall I go find a Hebrew woman to nurse the baby for you, ma'am? And Pharaoh's daughter's like, well, you know, that's a good idea. Look here in verse 8. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. And the maid went and called the child's mother. So guess what? Who's going to get to nurse this little baby? His mother. And guess what? Now, not only, God worked it out so that not only would this woman be able to keep her baby boy, but now Pharaoh, the king, who ordered all the little baby boys to be killed, would be paying this baby's mother to nurse it. Isn't that amazing? So look here now in verse 9. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, take this child away. Now she doesn't know that's her mother, the child's mother. Take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will give thee thy wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it. Isn't that amazing? And the child grew. And she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moses. She said, because I drew him out of the water. The name Moses means to be rescued, to be drawn out. Okay? So, while Moses was being nursed by his mother, we don't know how long that was, but it was long enough that he was weaned, and that mama taught that baby boy all she could, and instilled in that little boy the things that he needed to know. He knew he was Hebrew. He knew he was not Egyptian, but he was raised up and became a man living in royalty and being trained in the educational system of the Egyptians, the best educational system they could have, by the way, at that time. And so, look here now, if you would, in verse 11. And it came to pass in those days when Moses was grown, that he went out unto his brethren and looked on their burdens, and he spied an Egyptian smiting in Hebrew one of his brethren. So he goes out, he's grown. Of course, he's in royalty. And he's way on up there. And he looks out one day and he's thinking, man, these are my people. And look at them, they're slaves. And these are the people I came from. And then he sees an Egyptian beating, smiting, somehow striking one of his fellow Hebrew people. And so guess what he does? Verse 12, and he looked this way and that way, and when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. So he's like, I don't see anyone looking around here. So he goes out and he kills that Egyptian, and he buried his body. And so verse 13, and when he went out the second day, behold, 2 men of the Hebrews strove together. And he said to him that did the wrong, wherefore smitest thou thy fellow? And so now he's going back out and he's looking over everything. And now he sees 2 Israelites fighting with each other. And one of them strikes the other one. And he saw one of them was at fault. Now he just killed an Egyptian for smiting one of his kinfolks. And now he sees his kinfolks fighting each other. So he goes out there and he's trying his best to run interference for these people and help them. And here they are fighting with themselves. And so he says, why did you smite your own flesh and blood? Verse 14. And he, that is the one that hid his fellow man, said, Who made thee a prince and a judge over us? Intendest thou to kill me as thou killest the Egyptian? And Moses feared and said, Surely this thing is known. Uh-oh. So listen to the attitude of this Jewish man. Instead of saying, Moses, you're right. I shouldn't have hit him. And by the way, thank you for taking up for us yesterday. Thank you for killing that Egyptian and hiding him in the sand. He thinks, hey, I've got leverage on Moses. He's not going to get anything over on me. So he goes, who are you? Who made you a ruler and a judge over us? Now that's the attitude that Joseph's brothers had, isn't it? You're not going to rule over us. Now here we are with that same attitude with Moses. You're not going to rule over us. Moses, by the way, just like Joseph, is another picture of the coming Savior. In great, brilliant detail we'll find as we go through the book of Exodus. And so just like Joseph, who was rejected by his brethren when he was trying to help them, Moses is the same way. He comes into his own receive him not. Same way. And so Moses is like, man, I didn't think anybody knew or anybody saw me do that. Apparently somebody saw me. And he's like, I better get out of here. Because as soon as Pharaoh finds out about this, he's going to get me. So let's look here now in verse 15. Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian. And he sat down by a well. Now Midian was the city of one of the children of Abraham, who Abraham had through one of his concubines. And so that was Abraham's descendants in the land of Midian. And Moses flees there, and he sits down by a well. He's tired. He's probably hungry. He is probably very frustrated with his life right now. And because he's like, man, I just knew God put me in this great position in Pharaoh's house so I could help deliver my people. And now they rejected me. And so he's sitting down by the well. Verse 16, now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. And when they came to rule their father, he said, how is it that ye are come so soon today? And they said, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us and watered the flock. And he said unto his daughters, and where is he? Why is it that you have left the man? Call him that we may eat bread. In other words, invite him over for supper. And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses Zipporah, his daughter. So Moses was taken in by the priest of Midian, and he received shelter, a family. The man gave him his daughter, one of his daughters, to be his wife. And so we look now in verse 23, and it came to pass in the process of time that the king of Egypt died, and the children of Israel sighed by reason of the bondage, and they cried, and their cry came up unto God by reason of the bondage. So the man that was trying to kill Moses, that particular king, he's dead now. And the Jews, the Israelites, they're very much afflicted. They're in bondage, and they're like, dear God, help us. God, get us out of this mess. Just help us. And God was hearing their prayers. And so let's watch and see what happens here. Look now, if you would, in verse 24. And God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham. God will never forget his promise, you see. He remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. And God looked upon the children of Israel, and God had respect unto them. Look now in chapter 3. Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. Now the mountain of God is a place that we call Mount Sinai or Horeb, and it's located about right here. All right? It's still there today, and it's quite amazing, some of the photos and videos that I've seen of it, and that some of you all may have seen of it. And but it's still there today. And so let's go ahead and look here now. Verse 2, and the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. Now, when we see the angel of the Lord appearing unto someone, who did we say that was?
Jesus.
That's correct. But when we see the angel of the Lord, or anytime we see God appearing to someone in the Old Testament, it is the promised Savior, not appearing as the man born of a virgin, but appearing, in this case, as a flame in a bush that was not consumed. Okay? So let's go ahead and look here now. It says, and he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. Verse 3, and Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see him, God called unto him out of the midst of the bush. You see, this is God. The angel of the Lord means the appearance of the Lord. Now, there can be an angel that appears on behalf of God. That's not God. But then there is the angel of the Lord in the sense that the Lord appears in a particular form or as a particular person, and it's God himself. And we see that it is God himself here, okay? It's because God called unto him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Draw not nigh hither. In other words, don't get too close, Moses. Put off thy shoes from off thy feet, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground. Moreover, he said, and you're going to see who the angel of the Lord is, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon God. Isn't that amazing? The angel of the Lord. Here is God appearing to man. Here is the one who promised that he would deliver them out of Egypt and bring them to this land and give it to them forever. Here is the one who promised that he would overcome sin and death and remove the curse from the world and restore the blessing. Here he was appearing to Moses. And look what he's going to do now. He says in verse 7, and the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters. For I know their sorrows, and I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of that land into a good land and large, into a land flowing with milk and honey. Now he's talking about the promised land here, in Canaan. Now, here's what I want you to see. This is very important. We're going to look at a lot of doctrine here. The first thing I want you to see is the word Lord in verse 4 or verse 2. The angel of the Lord in verse 2, in verse 4, and when the Lord saw. Now, does anyone have a translation other than the King James? Does everyone have the same translation as me? Word for word, everything I say is what you're reading? Everything? Okay. So, in your Bibles, the word Lord, is it all caps? Okay. So, the reason it's all caps in the King James translation is to signify that this is a special word, and it's Yahweh. Yahweh. Have you ever heard the word Yahweh before? Okay. Some have. Have you, Cody? Okay, no. Well, it's the word Yahweh in Hebrew. Yahweh is, I think it's called a tetragrammaton or something like that, but it's all consonants. There's no vowels. Right? So Yahweh is all consonants. Oh, is it O or A? Consonants?
Yeah.
Is that correct? Or is it O?
I can't recall.
I didn't do very well there.
It's all consonants. She's going to look it up. Now, it's most closely pronounced. Is that correct?
It's O.
Oh, there we go. Now, you may have also heard of this word, Jehovah. You ever heard Jehovah? You heard Jehovah? That's a little more common, isn't it? The reason it's more common is because the word Jehovah is Latinized, okay? And a lot of our language is based off of Latin, okay? So, what happened is, there's another name for Lord in the Bible. It's Adonai. And so since Yahweh is all consonants, what happened was, for the English-speaking people, they took the vowels from Adonai, added them to Yahweh, where it was only consonants, and then we come up with Jehovah, okay? And so Jehovah and Yahweh are the same word. It's just one is more strictly Hebrew and the other is a more Latinized version that makes it more palatable to our tongue, okay? So, if you can think of it like that. But anyway, every time you see Lord in all capital letters, it's this word Yahweh, okay? Now, this is very important, and here's why. We're about to see the meaning of this word, okay? If you'll look here now in verse, but before we get there, the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people. Look now in verse 8. Watch this now, this is important. I am come down. Watch what the Lord said. I am come down, or I have come down. Now watch, if you'll underscore, I am come down to deliver them. And now if you'll look, and after you underscore, I am come down to deliver them, then go down a few words further and underscore to bring them up. I am come down to bring them up. Isn't that good? I am come down to bring them up. This is all a picture of what's about to take place in the future. And God is going to use Moses to do it. That's important. So God has come down that he may bring his people up. And how is he going to bring his people up? Through this man named Moses. Moses then is going to become a deliverer, a savior of the people of Egypt. And how God uses Moses to deliver them out of their bondage is a picture of how God is going to use his son. In other words, the angel of the Lord is going to not be a flame in a bush, but he's going to be born as a babe in a manger. And he is going to be used by God to bring us up out of our bondage. The Lord Jesus said that he was the one who came down from heaven to give life into the world. All right, so now if you'll look here, we must hurry, and let's go to verse 10. what God tells Moses, come now therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. So God is commissioning Moses to go to the king of Egypt and tell the king of Egypt, God says, let my people go. So we're going to have a big contest between the God of the people of Israel, the king of heaven, and the king of Egypt. And God's going to say, these people belong to me, we'll let them go. And there's going to be a contest between the two. And God's servant Moses is going to be the one that he sends to get them out. When you get into the New Testament, you'll see Jesus speaking like that God sent him into the world. It's very, very fascinating. All right? And in fact, there's one particular place in the Bible where Jesus capitalizes on the word sent. I am the one that God sent. You have to believe that God sent me to you. All right, now, let's go ahead and look here now in verse 12. And he said, certainly I will be with thee, and this shall be a token unto thee that I have sent thee. When thou hast brought forth the people out of Egypt, ye shall serve God upon this mountain. In other words, Moses, we're right here at this mountain. The next time you're here, you're going to have all the people of Israel with you. The very place you're standing at this mountain, all the children of Israel are going to be back here with you. We're going to be here again. All right? And that was a promise that God made. Now watch this here. Verse 13, and Moses said unto God, behold, when I come unto the children of Israel, and shall say unto them, the God of your fathers hath sent me unto you, and they shall say to me, what is his name? What shall I say unto them? Now this is sad, but these people have been in this pagan Egyptian country for a long time, and this pagan country had all kinds of gods with all kinds of names. They even worshiped Pharaoh, the king, as a god. They worshiped the Nile River as a god. They worshiped the sun as a god. And Moses is thinking ahead. He says, they may ask me, well, what's our God's name? What do we call him? Verse 14. And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am hath sent me unto you. Now that word I am is Yahweh. It's Yahweh. That is the proper name of God. Now God has many names in the Bible because there's many wonderful descriptions of God. But in this case, he identifies himself as Yahweh. And Yahweh means I am. That's what it means, I am. Now, why is that so important? He says, I am that I am. In other words, I am, in the word, remember, I am, it means self-existing. I am the one who simply is. I am the one who was, who has always been, who is, and who will always be. I am the God who was never created, is dependent on nothing. I am the eternally existing God. And there is no other God like that. You study the pagan religions, there's one thing I found about the pagan religions. Every god they have came from someplace. They were born from another god. They popped up out of some explosion. They did something, but they all arrived from something. And remember when we learned the very beginning of our Bible study of creation, in the beginning, God. And I told you back then that eventually there has to be something that always exists. Because everything came from something. And then, so the question is, where did that come from? Where did that come from? Where did that come from, right? Where did we come from? We came from this. Where did that come from? Well, they say, well, we came from monkeys. Well, where did the monkeys come from? They came from fish. Where did they came from? They came from these creatures in the ocean, or the primordial soup, these bacteria. Where did that come from? Well, it came from this big explosion. Well, what exploded? Gas and matter. Well, where did that gas and matter come from? And they don't know. But everything had to come from something. And if it didn't come from something, and if it did come from something, that means you would infinitely be pointing back. Where did that come from? Where did that come from? Where did that come from? And it would never end. And logically, that can't happen. Logically, something has to simply exist and come from nothing, and then everything come from that. And God says, that's me. I am that from which everything came. I am that I am. You go tell Israel, that's the one who sent you. Pharaoh came from me. I made him. The earth you're on came from me. Your life came from me. The sun that they worship came from me. The river they worship came from me. I am the one who said, let there be light. I am that I am. And God willing, we'll start back up here next week. We'll watch Moses go back to the people, and we'll begin to watch this incredible contest. You talk about some fireworks that's going to take place. We're going to watch the incredible contest that takes place between God and Pharaoh. All right?